Search together. Search together. IPSA. We're not just a name in a directory. Local minds with national synergy.
Yes, local minds with natural synergy, as we say, bopping along. Welcome to IPSA, Kind of Magic, or the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents. Wonderful. And, of course, as ever, my bosom pal, Hamish McClay of Search and Convey is here. And we have consultant and founder member, I would say, of IPSA, Jackie Dawson. Lately,
Dyson. Come on, you can't forget the name of a vacuum cleaner.
We remember that.
Well, like a Dyson, she's very effective. Jackie Dyson, there we go. Lately of the Yorkshire Search Agency Limited. We're talking about a topic that largely gets unspoken about. We often sneer at it. We might point fingers at it, but in Britain, we don't really know much about it per se, or should I say, in the latter part of the UK. That is the Scottish, and particularly about the Scottish system. Is it better, or is it just different? Hamish, start us off.
Well, they do an awful lot of things rather differently up in Scotland. I mean, for example, we've just been enjoying. Well, some of us haven't, but some of us have been enjoying this bank holiday weekend.
Yeah.
Now, not all of us over Scotland were they doing that, because they have different laws up in Scotland, and it's the council will dictate when the days off happen to be. So many of them won't have been having a day off at the start of the week. So that's one difference the council makes. However, there is one wonderful thing that they're doing. Scottish bank holiday has been taken out for the day on the 15th of June to celebrate something remarkable and very, very unusual. The Scottish football team actually got through to the World Cup. They qualified.
So, wow.
So the Scots have got the day off to celebrate. Now, isn't that something? But they do lots of things differently. I mean, early days of our business, we used to travel an awful lot back up to Scotland. I do have family up there, still in Glasgow. And we'd head off up to the sort of west coast and everything. And we found a particular sort of interesting Argyll show. I mean, Argyll, fabulous place to visit if you ever go up to Scotland. And there are a couple of places which interested us, and one in particular, which we came across. Now, the interesting thing is up in Scotland, you have an awful lot of estate agents are also solicitors as well as estate agents.
Right.
They are one and the same. And particularly along the banks of Loch Fyne, if you drive up the banks of Loch Fyne, you think, there's a nice wee cottage for sale. You find it in the local estate agent, but the local solicitor would sort of help you out. There was a very, very different system up there. And in actual fact, where we used to go regularly, right next to the pub we used to stop at, as we sort of, as part of the visit, there was actually a local solicitor. I never got round to speaking to him about the conveyancing up there. But what we did actually come across one particular property, and it was absolutely fabulous. It was an ex-schoolhouse. Now, we're going back now sort of 20 years. But it was an ex sort of schoolhouse. It had nice grounds, lovely little playground in the middle of a village. And they only wanted I don't know how many bedrooms you're going to build into this. So it was right on the banks of sort of Loch Orr, which is incredible inland loch. So it's freshwater loch. And the fishing is there is reputedly some of the best in the world. And you'd have anglers coming from all over the place. And this schoolhouse had been partially converted for these fishermen you could put up there for 25, 50 quid a night, whatever it happened to sort of be. So they could go out fishing on sort of Loch Orr. And they only wanted 180 grand for this ex-school. There was the school, all the halls and so all the rest of it. And we looked up and we actually got in touch with and the actual people who were selling it said they really wanted to sell it to us. And it was just at that particular sort of time that the government decided to change the rules here in England and banned, if you like, cancel home information packs. So our businesses had just taken a massive great dive. So for us to be able to sort of fund a change but it was very, very interesting that the property was in the estate agents, the local estate agents. And in actual fact, you went to the local cafe to discuss matters about the school. It's just amazing. Very, very different. Almost like the local towns used to be in England going back many, many years. And they still actually sort of kept that particular sort of notion. But there are multiple changes, which Jackie knows much more about than I do.
Only a little.
As a downside, more than Gareth and I know.
I know could be written on the back of a very small postage stamp. Jackie, you've been doing a little bit of research, I believe.
Yeah, yesterday I was just interested because when I got contacted to talk about today, I knew that the Scottish system was totally different. Well, not totally different. It's not totally different. It's just that they do things slightly differently, and it stops a lot of gazumping. And might be people watching that have been gazumped, and it must be the most stressful thing. They say now that
it happened to me.
Yeah.
When many years ago when I was selling a flat, and obviously it didn't affect me so directly, but the people involved, I felt terrible for them.
Yeah. And we know that the conveyancing in England and Wales is taking longer and longer and longer. And the notice are different. It's something that we're sort of trying to get here. And the thing is, what they do, they have a home report, which is your survey. It includes your survey, costs your energy report, your IPSA, which we have here. But it includes a property questionnaire. And these have to be done before marketing the property. And that property questionnaire here is something that's done sort of after you've marketed the property.
Right.
It doesn't include as much information as a local search would do, but it includes an awful lot more information. And so it gives the prospective purchaser a lot more information than we do here. And this is right. What the home information pack was going for. It didn't prove very good at the time, but perhaps now with the market taking so long, it might be better for us to introduce it. So all this information is put out when the property is marketed. So a prospective purchaser can come and have a look and think, well, yeah, I like this. So you register your interest with the seller's agent. And this prevents a lot of gazumping, because they look into things like, have you got your mortgage offer, etc., etc., etc. And the solicitor, conveyancer, submits a formal written offer outlining the price and a completion date.
Wow.
And that is the difference.
It's like a proper business, like a business transaction.
Yes, they often say this is what this and this, and the completion date will be. So once all the terms are agreed and letters are concluded, a contract becomes legally binding with that completion date. But if either party withdraws or any of the parties withdraw from the chain, they are responsible for liabilities. In other words, the expenses. If someone's put down a deposit and they lose a deposit on a brand new house, which often happens. So someone along that chain, if you stop that chain, you are responsible for those liabilities. So it stops people pulling out, and it also stops gazumping because things have been sorted up front. Now, I noticed also that in Scotland, it takes between 6 to 8 weeks from start to finish. And at the moment, I looked on a fair few websites in England and Wales, and I got anywhere between 18 and 22 weeks before a completion date, or things are completed in England and Wales.
In other words, considerably longer.
Yeah, well, 22 weeks, that's 4 months. That's over 4 months. In fact, another 4 weeks, and you're going into your 6 months. And this is what is taking the time in England and Wales. So if we had this home report, this survey energy report, and the property questionnaire does ask an awful lot more. As I said, though, not as much as the local authority search. They're asked to provide planning permissions, building inspectors reports, certificates, etc. All this is asked for up front. So your conveyancer solicitor is not getting the search and saying, right, okay, this was granted permission in so-and-so, I want a copy of the decision notice, or it was given building regulations information, I want a copy of the building regs and has it been inspected? It's already there. So they don't waste time asking for information once they've received the search. And we know now, I've looked, and searches are not holding up purchases and selling in England and Wales. It's other things. Searches are now coming back so quickly from some local authorities, not all, but also with regulated local authority searches, which are provided by IPSA members. Searches are no longer holding it up. So the conveyancers can no longer blame searches. So there's that difference. So it does stop gazumping. It speeds the process up. So why can't we have that system in England and Wales? Why aren't we having that system in England and Wales? Who's stopping that system and why? That's what I want to know.
Hamish, yeah. So, I mean, Jackie, you said earlier that there wasn't that much difference. I mean, Hamish, that appears to be quite a fundamental one. It's the difference between a very loose arrangement, which can elongate in time without any provocation, without any knowledge at the end point that it's going to happen. You can go in with quite high hopes, and suddenly it gets elongated. Whereas in the Scottish system, things appear to be tied down like a proper business arrangement.
I think one of the major contributions to all is the fact that because it's a shorter time frame, which Jack has just sort of indicated there, a very significant shortening of the time frame.
Yes.
Very often what we've tended to find, and it was quite interesting, for example, when we were going back some years now, but it would take 9 weeks to get some of the local authority information back from the likes of Wiltshire, particularly North Wiltshire and sort of South Wiltshire. And they, as a consequence, they had more cancellations of, if you like, things that were going through, more collapses in terms of the purchasing. And it was because of that extended time frame. Now, as Jackie's explained, an awful lot can happen within a 6-month period. Nothing as much is going to happen, unless it's with this current government, within a 2 to 3 month sort of period. Basically, once you've set something in motion, you're gonna come out the other end of it and be able to sort of satisfy your needs. But when you spread it over 6 months, so many things can actually happen which can change the whole picture. And what we must remember too, people are still at a disadvantage in this country by virtue of the methodology they're using for conveyancing. Now, as Jackie mentioned, we've got a lot of material type of information that comes in the first instance. I believe it's easier to get hold of much more information from the councils than is readily available from our councils. But of course, there aren't so many of them. But the whole system's managed, if you like, much more sort of fairly than it was. And there's this automatic assumption. It's almost like a gentleman's agreement, although there is the law behind it. Once you've made that offer, that's actually sort of set down. And once you change your mind, it's going to cost you money because it's you that's changed your mind. There are, of course, circumstances, but again, sort of up in the rights of Scotland, it's still possible to actually take out insurance against such things. But what we have the challenge here in this country, because of the method which is used for so many of the conveyancing searches that are required, you add 2 or 3 weeks on to whatever Jackie and I would suggest, the council might turn it around. So, for example, if you're sort of saying or we can get it back within 3 weeks. If you pass that work on to certain methods of actually carrying out the local searches, which is more the conveyor type, the factory, they call it conveyor, the factory sort of type, that type of methodology, because of the way that it's set up, that's going to take an extra 2 to 3 weeks anyway. So at least by coming down the IPSA route, you've taken 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even more time out of that transaction. But I think the whole thing appears much more fairly up in Scotland, and you hear far, far fewer complaints, and you hear far fewer people saying what a traumatic experience that was, which is one of the major aspects of what goes on in England and Wales.
I was going to say, a marriage made in heaven is, in my mind, an IPSA search by an IPSA member combined with a savvy lawyer and a decent estate agent. You get all those three elements working together, and you'll have a decent search, things happening in a reasonable period of time, and nobody getting disappointed. But the problem is, a lot of the time, as you say, Jackie, the search isn't the thing that's holding the stuff up.
No,
it's and not only that, but if it is a search, it's because they got too much information. They've gone to a factory conveyancer, they've got a ton of information. The poor lawyer's got to work through it, trying to work out what's relevant and what isn't. And before you know it, we're now 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks behind time. And the buyer is sitting there with their head in their hands, wondering when they're going to get the keys. In the system in Scotland, it would appear that if you're going to enter into the funnel at the top, you're pretty much tied in there to the bitter end, unless you decide to give up, and then there's a penalty, as Amy said.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. My daughter's just moved, and it's been so stressful. I mean, she has a stressful job to start with, a very stressful job. And it's just taken an absolutely ridiculous amount of time, 4.5 months for 3 houses in a chain. Wow. So imagine if you were, it's, and they didn't know until the Friday morning whether they were actually moving. And it was that day, and they didn't get the keys to their new property until 5 o'clock. So
who needs that kind of stress?
Yeah, and the removal van, the men were sat there with their house, and as Stacey said to me, I'm actually homeless at the moment, Mum. What happens if I don't get the keys? And I'm thinking, oh no. So yes, they say that now moving house is more stressful than divorce, and I never thought I would hear that. And I mean, I've never gone through divorce, fortunately. I've been married 46 years last Sunday. So yeah, 2 life sentences I've had. But I mean, I think it's worth England and Wales looking at something similar with the Scottish system. Yes, the home information packs, when they were introduced, were a good thing to a certain extent, but they were introduced at totally the wrong time. They were introduced when the economy was collapsing, so we better not introduce them now then. It's something that does need looking at from the conveyancing industry, to take that stress away, and to not encourage more people to move, but people might take, look, shall we move? And then they think about all the stress and the costs and everything. Is it really worth it? So are a lot of people not moving? I mean, obviously at the moment with the way that the country is going, and I shouldn't get into politics, people are a bit scared to take steps at the moment, because we don't know what's happening with the war in the Middle East and stuff like that. But are we stopping people moving through the thought of that stress, especially if you're working and you've got a family?
It did that to me for years. I wanted to move house many years ago, but I could not face that whole process.
Thought. Yeah.
And if it falls through, that you have to go through it all over again.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky. It was pretty easy. This is going to sound terrible, but I was lucky because the gentleman who owned this place had died. That made things a lot easier. The only thing we had to wait for was probate, and that was straightforward. It was, thankfully, he left a will. He wasn't intestate, which meant the whole thing went through relatively smoothly.
Yeah.
And I was done and dusted within 2 to 3 months.
Yeah,
Very,
that's how it should be. But I feel now that, as we said, there's more and more information out there, and they're wanting more and more information, which I can understand, because a property is the biggest investment you will make in your life.
yeah.
It's the biggest, apart from, well, the only other thing that comes close is your wedding, isn't it? And kids. Kids cost you a fortune, there. But a property is
My wedding cost me £87.50, and was the best 8 minutes of my life.
Oh, right. Well, mine cost a bit more, wasn't that? It was only about 2.5, 3 grand, but I mean, that was a very, very long time ago. My daughter's wedding dress cost more than that this time.
I don't understand all that nonsense. I don't. We were married dressed as pirates in a wedding chapel in Vegas.
Yeah, I can imagine you doing that, Gareth. Yes, very much so.
And instead of thinking, oh, how much money can we spend on a honeymoon, Heather and I decided we were going to have the trip of a lifetime, go across America, and we detoured halfway through to go to Vegas to get married, and then carried on with the trip. So it was a trip that happened to have a wedding in it, rather than a wedding that had a honeymoon, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
I'm saying, that way I ended up with exactly what I wanted. It was amazing, and so did Heather. We had the greatest time. But Hamish, would you care to round us out and help us go home?
Well, I want to tell you about my wedding, actually, because that took place. We were going to our honeymoon was taking place at Fairport Convention's annual sort of reunion fest.
Sounds amazing.
Way back in 1992. So we got the most fantastic thing about it. We had the children with us then, because this is my third marriage. But we had the children with us then as well. They came as long as we told them they were going to the festival. We didn't tell them about the registry office that were on the way. The trouble is, between the registry office and getting to where we were going to be camping over with all the music and all the rest of it for the next sort of 2 or 3 days, I lost everybody. So they had to have sort of their married breakfast in McDonald's on their own without the husband, because I was lost already.
Where were you lost?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't find where the bloody McDonald's was. But they shouldn't have sat navs, of course. So I didn't know my way to it. But anyway, back to what we were speaking about. If you are working with the right sort of people down in England, you can actually take away some of those time delaying sort of aspects that are part of it. Jackie explained earlier, very rarely is it the searches that hold things up. A couple of things relative to the searches. If the buyer's conveyancer is going to leave it till very long into 16, 17 weeks, used to be the average, before they went out got the information for the search, that's far too long. If you've got the information right there, if the seller puts the information in front of the buyer, they can make that informed decision like they can up in Scotland. Yeah. Far fewer fall-throughs, and everything is so much better. So not necessarily the Scottish system, because that would remain all those changes in laws, but using the system that we have much more effectively. And particularly if you're using something like a personal search agent, as we call them, a local person to go in and do the research at that particular sort of local council. They know the best way in, they know the quickest way in, and they know what the information is important. So they will refine it more effectively than somebody sat up at a desk. So
it's like we've said so often, Hamish, if you build the right team around you of people that you can rely on to do their part of the project themselves, without you having to constantly wave a fist at them, that you're far more likely to end up with the right result. Now, arguably, from what Jackie's research has shown, if we followed a more Scottish, if we followed a more Scottish play, that's what I did there. If we followed a more Scottish play, then we might end up with more people getting through, losing less hair in the process, because the stress would have been taken away, because you're tied into a system. You know what the moment you sign up to it, you signed a contract, and unless you want to lose money by backing out of the contract, you'll follow it through to the bitter end. So it means you're more likely to do your research up front and get it right first time. I think there's a lot of merit in that. What do you think? Thank you so much for spending time with us today. This has been IPSA Kind of Magic, and I hope to see you tomorrow. We've got three more. No, is it three? No, two more. We've got we got Property Quorum tomorrow, which is a nice bun fight, and then on Friday we've got arguably the most viewed of our property get-togethers, which is called Cladding Matters. Please do come along. But until next time, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars. And in these troubled times, please look after your mental health. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you, Hamish. Bye-bye, all.